Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Emily could not sleep a wink all night. The thoughts were like pesky bees, stinging her heart, and it was impossible to escape them. Emily was all turned on. And in the morning, as soon as her husband left for work, she dialed her mother's phone number. "I think Tony has someone on the side." Emily shared her suspicions with her mother, Maria. "Do you really think that Tony has an affair?" The woman was surprised. "I can hardly believe it. He doesn't love you very much. There has always been a harmony between you that was envied by everyone around you. That was before. I'm not so sure of his feelings anymore. I suspect that he is cheating on me." Emily answered, "What makes you think that? Daughter, do you have reason to doubt your husband's faithfulness?" Maria asked. "He has been acting differently lately than usual. In his mind, he is always away, even when he is near." "I feel that he is hiding something from me," answered her daughter. "Maybe he just has some problems in the business, or he just does not want to dedicate you in his affairs, so as not to worry too much. You know what a caring husband he is, taking care of your nerves and trying to protect you from all kinds of problems. Not being pessimistic, not thinking about the bad things. You have to trust your spouse. I'm trying my best to keep my composure and control, but I'm having a hard time," Emily sighed. "I feel something happening to him. He pulled away from me. I think you're both just tired. There's been so much trouble lately. Your mother-in-law's death was unfortunate. You need to get some rest and be alone. Bring me my grandson for the weekend and go to a holiday home yourself," Maria suggested. "I would love to, but it will not work. Tomorrow he leaves on a business trip for a few days. I wanted to go with him, but he delicately dodged my company. Although before, Tony was only happy when I accompanied him on work trips." Emily remarked bitterly. "Don't feel bad, daughter. I'm sure there's an explanation for your husband's alienation. Everything will work itself out. You'll see. Take your mind off your burdensome thoughts and chase them away. Occupy yourself with something to see your friends. Go shopping or go to the hair salon. Nothing lifts your spirits like a new dress or hairstyle." Maria said goodbye to Emily and hung up. "My daughter's words made me very sad. She considered the marriage of her blood happy and successful." The woman was unspeakably happy that her daughter had managed to create such a strong and friendly unit of society. And she didn't want to believe that Emily and Tony's marriage had cracked. Emily was her only child. Maria divorced her husband Michael when their little girl was 7 years old. Her ex-husband was a military man, a stately, handsome man, as it is called now, with a brutal appearance, able to charm women. The female sex was drawn to him like a magnet, and no matter what distant garrison, the fate threw the young family. Maria's husband managed to have an affair everywhere. About his brave adventures and love victories, she constantly reported so-called well-wishers. Maria hoped that her husband would eventually settle down, and the birth of a daughter would affect his behavior. But it wasn't to be. As the years passed, Michael continued to run after every skirt. For a long time, a woman turned a blind eye to the many novels spoused to save a unit of society. But the last straw in the cup of patience was the news of the pregnancy of his next passerby. Maria noticed that her husband in recent years rushed to the emergency room. And in addition to headache pills, the young nurse offered him something extra. Better to be a single mother than live with a traitor under one roof. The woman reasoned and filed for divorce. This decision was not easy for her because she had always believed that this is the most important value in a person's life. But Maria had to divorce her husband first and foremost for the happiness of the one she loved most in the world of her growing daughter. After all, whether we want it or not, we bring up children by our own behavior and example. The child soaks up the atmosphere that reigns in the family like a sponge. And the woman did not want her daughter to think her father was a womanizer. Before leaving the military camp forever, Maria couldn't help but look into the medical unit. She wanted to look into the eyes of a thief who had broken into someone else's home. "What do you want here?" asked a young nurse, when the visitor entered the treatment room without knocking. The girl led Maria with a haughty look and proudly pulled out her chin. From her facial expression, It was clear that she knew exactly who was standing in front of her. Maria couldn't help but notice that this girl had an attractive Oriental appearance. Brown skin, a slender figure, eyes of a desperate color, and expressive cheekbones. Rarely a man could resist. I came to look into your shameless eyes. You're not ashamed of humping other men's husbands. I'm not with Michael, as you put it. We have mutual love. Oh, that's it. I guess my daughter and I were the odds-on favorite in the story, and interfered with your good feeling. Maria sneered. It's not my fault I met a man with aggravating circumstances in the form of family. Girl, however, as far as I know, this obstacle has already been removed. You filed for divorce, and you're leaving. I'm going to marry Michael and have a baby and live happily ever after with him. That's not likely to work out for you, Maria remarked. Why then did the black eyebrows of the girl drop? Are you taking me with you? Just because it didn't work out between you and him doesn't mean I'm going to fail. I wouldn't rely on a man like Michael if I were you. If he's used to cheating, he's not likely to change by magic. Michael is unfaithful by nature, and he will cheat on you just like my ex-wife told me. And we'll see about that. He just didn't love you. That's why he went out with me. Things will be different, the nurse declared. You're wrong. Michael loved me, but that didn't stop him from going out. Your feelings make you hope that it is your love that will fix the one you love, and that he will be faithful to you. But this is a delusion. A hump can be made right. Mark my words, Maria said and went out of the office. You're just jealous of me because you lost, shouted her cheeky rival in the back, breaking up with her unfaithful husband. Maria raised Emily alone, trying to give her the best of everything. She was a beautiful woman, and she sometimes had non-committal affairs. However, the woman did not think of binding herself again to the bonds of marriage. She concentrated entirely on her child. Her little girl was growing up, smart and beautiful. To her mother's delight, the woman spared neither energy nor financial resources for her only child. The girl had everything in fancy clothes and classes and tutors and annual trips to the sea. My little angel was called Emily by her boundlessly loving mother. She was overwhelmed with pride at the sight of her daughter. God did not spare the girl's looks, and from an early age she was a wonder. How good was she? Blue eyes, weak-colored hair, a heavenly creature. Emily's portrait even hung as an advertisement in the window of the local city photo studio, making her mother proud. So it's no surprise that Maria's daughter has been popular with boys since first grade. She had no shortage of suitors. One was her briefcase, another bag with a change of shoes, another umbrella. The home phone was ringing off the hook, and the entryway was peppered with loving messages to Emily. Don't waste yourself on little things. Of all your many suitors, you must choose the one most worthy. A woman taught her growing-up daughter. There was a close, trusting relationship and a strong emotional bond between mother and daughter. Emily knew that her mother accepted and loved her. Undoubtedly, when she screams or is naughty and disobedient, she demands something, is sick, is in a bad mood. The strength of her patience and boundless love. Maria has created a very powerful support that her daughter will rely on throughout her life. Her mother was an authority and role model for Emily. She always consulted with her parent, shared her girlish secrets, and listened to her opinion. And that's why, when at the age of 23, during her studying at the 4th year of the Institute, Emily fell in love with Tony, she introduced her boyfriend to her mother at once. I think Tony is a decent young man. It seems to me that he suits you. Maria approved, then, of her daughter's choice, and her positive assessment was worth much. The woman genuinely liked Tony. He was 5 years older than Emily, had already graduated from the Finance Academy, and held a senior position in a small commercial firm. I'm not going to stop there. It may sound immodest, but I have big plans, which I'm sure are realistic. In the future, I plan to open my own business and develop in the financial sector, confessed the young man. Maria approved of the young man's healthy ambitions. Her daughter's admirer seemed to her a serious and purposeful man with conservative views of home and family life. That's what at the head of the matter, Tony said during the meeting with his future mother-in-law, which finally won her over. Maria gave her blessing for the marriage because she was sure that Tony was an excellent candidate for a son-in-law. She felt he would be able to properly take care of her beloved girl. At the ceremony at the wedding palace, Maria wept tears of happiness. Emily was uncommonly beautiful in a snow-white, lush black gown for the wedding. The groom looked at the bride with eyes full of love and adoration. The woman was sure that with such a spouse, her Emily would be happy to live like a stone wall. A year after the wedding, her daughter Maria gave birth to a son, Nick. Tony supported his family well, so they didn't know what they needed. The husband carried his wife in his arms and never missed his son. How did Emily's family life turn out well? My grandmother couldn't be happy, but still she had one reason to be sad. Emily and Tony desperately dreamed of having more children. But the long-awaited pregnancy did not come. The couple underwent all the necessary medical examinations, but tests did not reveal any problems with their health. The doctors simply looked around with their hands. After 7 years of another attempt to conceive a child, the couple resorted to the echo procedure, but it was unsuccessful. Neither of the 2 embryos implanted took root. Emily had a hard time with the failed surgery and the fact that she could not give birth to a baby brother or sister for Nikita. Her husband was an excellent father, and she knew how much he dreamed of a large and close-knit family. And although psychologically it was quite difficult for her. A year later, Emily decided to have another IVF attempt, but it didn't work either. And after the 3rd unsuccessful landing, the young woman completely gave up. Last summer, Emily and Tony celebrated their 1st anniversary since getting married. 10 years of happy married life. Maria was sitting at the tin table celebrating their wedding. Daughters happy and joyful. She was calm about her child's fate. However, after Emily's last call, anxiety crept into her soul. Could it be that my Emily, like me, will someday suffer the same fate as a cheated wife and divorcee? The woman worried. Waking up the next day after her conversation with Emily, Maria looked out the window. There was not a single cloud in the sky. Apparently, the day promised to be similar and sunny. No precipitation. The woman decided not to miss a good opportunity to enjoy a warm day. She took her beloved grandson Nick and went with him to the park, which was downtown. Maria also persuaded her daughter to go with them to enjoy herself. But she was not in the mood. It took them 40 minutes to get to the park. They got off at the bus stop and walked leisurely down the street, when suddenly the woman noticed her son-in-law's car. What was Tony doing here? He seemed to be away on a business trip, she wondered. But there could be no mistake. It was her dear child. Yes, he was going out. As much of a ladies' man as my lusty ex-husband. The woman was angry. She was about to approach her son-in-law to catch him red-handed. But her grandson made the woman stop halfway. She didn't want the boy to witness how low his father had fallen. Maria, however, couldn't wait to find out who her son-in-law had confused everything with. The woman cleverly hid behind a passive column and pulled her grandson with her from behind her hiding place. She continued to keep watch. "Grandma, are we hiding from someone?" Nick wondered. "Yeah, pretend we're playing spies. Stay put and stay put." Maria had a stray thought in her head that maybe things weren't at all what they looked like, that her son-in-law's plans might have changed and he hadn't gone anywhere. Moments later, Tony and the petite blonde emerged from the interior of the car. He gently put his arm around her waist and looked at her with eyes full of tenderness, almost the same way he had looked at his fiancée at her wedding. Maria was almost speechless. He was, after all, no more than 18 years old. How could he get mixed up with young girls? What kind of bastard? Maria was horrified. Tony and his companions smiled at each other, holding hands tightly. The woman's heart smelled bad, but there was still hope in her heart for a favorable outcome to the whole story. Or maybe it's a girl his subordinate, for example, some student intern, she suggested. Moments later, the blonde son-in-law, laughing happily, headed toward the building under her arm, securing thereby the most ungodly suspicion for Maria born in the soul. It is unlikely that students nowadays have their internships in hotel rooms, the woman remarked. She was forced to admit that her son-in-law was walking around behind his wife's back as well. There was no longer any doubt that Tony was cheating. From the moment Maria revealed this unflattering right, she hasn't found her place. How long had Tony been having this affair? How serious was it with his mistress? The questions tormented her. Maria had spent a lot of time with her daughter's family when her grandson was young. She often helped out and lived under the same roof with them for weeks at a time. The life of her daughter and her husband was before her eyes. And before, she had never imagined that Tony would be capable of going left. All these years she had thought of him as a faithful and reliable man, a decent family man. But from the day she noticed him with another, Maria did nothing but find confirmation of her son-in-law's infidelity. When Maria showed up to visit her daughter a few days after her trip downtown, she found a woman's blonde hair on Tony's jacket, which was hanging on a coat rack in the hallway. It was clearly the footprints of that young runaway. The woman was indignant. Both the jacket itself and Tony's jacket literally smelled like someone else's woman's perfume. It smelled awfully luscious. "My daughter does not use such perfume," Maria noted to herself. She also noticed that her son-in-law went everywhere with a cell phone in his hands, even when he went to take a shower. And if he sat down to sit at the table, he put it with the screen down. But isn't that suspicious? He's obviously hiding something, the attentive woman guessed. Before, she considered herself a good mother-in-law, trying not to interfere in the lives of young people and not to meddle with their moral teachings. However, after what she had recently learned, it was getting harder every day to keep silent. Maria's first thought was to talk to her daughter, to tell her frankly what she had seen, and to open her eyes to her husband. After all, a bitter truth is better than a sweet lie, and he who is warned is armed. However, on reflection, the woman hesitated at the idea whether I have the right to interfere in their family. She pondered. After all, my intervention can destroy the marriage. And as we all know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And Maria did not want to hurt her daughter, because she had first-hand experience of how unbearable it was to know that you were betrayed and exchanged for another. And in general, maybe not everything is as tragic as it seems at first glance. She pondered Tony will survive this notorious midlife crisis. She would come to her senses and everything would go back to normal. Maria tried to convince herself that it was better not to make it known. But on the other hand, she was well aware that all secrets sooner or later reveal themselves. Her daughter would sooner or later find out about her husband's young mistress. And if my daughter finds out about the betrayal of someone else, would she not consider me a traitor and her own mother? The woman wondered. Emily, for her nature, is susceptible and sensitive. She could be offended that I knew everything, but kept silent. Kind of like the message was and her spouse's sin was covered up. Maria knew her daughter well. Her Emily is a very trusting person. She loved her husband with all her soul. And it was even frightening to imagine what a strong blow for her would be the truth revealed, and to deliberately hurt her beloved child. Maria was not in a position to break up a family is not a difficult thing to do. Emily could divorce Tony, but then how would she live without him? The woman did not understand. She was not only devoted to him with her soul, but she was also financially dependent on him. Tony works, provides for his family, and fulfills every whim of Emily and Nick. Her daughter and grandson don't eat anything. About Emily's history, it won't be easy, because she hasn't worked a day in her life. And then, if my son-in-law leaves the family, my grandson will be left without his own father, which is totally unacceptable. Nick just adores him. He runs to him screaming daddy when he comes home from work or from his mistress. Maria realized that the truth would break not only the heart of her dearly loved daughter, but also the little heart of her grandson. Did they deserve such a thing? I can't act as an executioner, the woman concluded. A couple of weeks after Maria's trip to downtown, Maria and her daughter's family traveled to the countryside. She sat with her grandson in the back seat of her son-in-law's car, while his wife took the front passenger seat, where she usually drove. Is that what this is? Emily asked her husband, holding out the woman's club lipstick she picked up from the shelf. Maria tensed and literally shrank all the way into her seat in anticipation of the reveal. She could theoretically save the situation and say that the lipstick belonged to her if she wanted to. But such a rich pink color the woman had never used in her life. And Emily would never have believed this obvious lie. Now the truth would reveal itself, Maria thought. She was relieved and afraid at the same time. Yes, I drove my subordinate to the subway. Her car broke down, and I kindly offered a ride. She must have dropped it. In a completely calm tone, replied his son-in-law, but cleverly noted to herself a woman. Well, how the rascal had got out of it, and did not blink an eye. Emily nodded, remained silent, and did not ask her husband any more questions, changing the subject. Did Emily really believe this fairy tale? Or was she wise, determined to pretend to be in holy ignorance? For the sake of preserving the family, Maria was lost in speculation. She had another thought to improve the moments, to call Tony to a frank conversation, to threaten him that if he did not stop going out, she would tell her daughter everything. And if he does not stop and break it off, she will keep it a secret for the rest of her life, and will take this secret to the grave when her time comes. In this way, Emily will never know anything, at least not from her own mother. But have I any right to talk to a grown man like that? The woman wondered. To count him out like little children, to set him conditions and ultimatums. All this could lead to conflict and strained relations, and that was something the woman did not want. Tony had always treated his mother-in-law very respectfully and never missed an opportunity to openly admire her resilience. Only someone as strong and brave as you could not be afraid to leave with a child in the middle of nowhere. To choose the path of the unknown, to escape the endless humiliation of a cheated wife, he enthused. One raised Emily to be a decent human being, and I am immensely grateful to you for that. She is a splendid wife and a wonderful mother, just as you are. There was a perfect rapport between son-in-law and mother-in-law. Their relationship was far from anecdotal, positive, even friendly. They were based on mutual respect. Tony was not stingy with generous presents for Maria. A refrigerator, then a washing machine, then a TV set. And recently he even bought a plot of land, especially for his precious mother-in-law. She had been dreaming about it for such a long time. So Maria even felt somewhat indebted to him. She didn't know how to be. Her mother's heart was bursting with happiness. She had already cursed the day she had revealed the unsightly secrets of her treacherous son-in-law 100 times over. Maria had no idea what to do. She had no one to ask her advice. Her husband had been long absent. She buried her parents long ago, and she did not want to pour out her heart to her target girlfriends. And she was not accustomed to take dirt out of the house, as she knew that the subject just gave her a reason to gloat. Behind her back is unbearable. It's hard to be a hostage to someone else's secret, especially when it comes to the dearest and closest person. It was with sadness that Maria realized. In the shadow of easy days, she, like any normal mother, wanted her child to be happy. So whether to save her daughter's marriage or let it go on its own, the woman wondered. After all, Maria has led all of herself behind them. And she made the difficult decision to tell Emily everything. She knew that it was not good to pry into other people's relationships, but it was a matter of privacy for her only daughter. She never let her child hurt, and this time she was not going to make an exception either. After gathering her thoughts, Maria stopped by to visit her daughter while Tony was at work. "Little girl, I have a confession to make. Unfortunately for me, your fears about your husband were not unfounded." The mother began a difficult conversation. "What do you mean?" "Mom happened to run into Tony downtown a month ago, and he wasn't on a business trip at all. As he told you, but was having a nice time with a young blonde." Maria said quietly. "I knew it," Emily exclaimed. "Things were going too well between us. Not long ago I was happily married, even though I couldn't manage to have a second child. I thought that our history, our love, would overcome any adversity, that we would work through any problems together. We always understood each other and believed that our connection was inseparable and we were indivisible. And it seemed to me that this would always be the case. But things have changed." Bitter tears came to Emily's eyes. Maria's soul ached. It was unbearable and agony for her to see her precious little girl suffer and be tormented. "A couple of months ago, I began to notice strange behavior or something." Emily continued. "He'd come home from work, and immediately sit down at his laptop. Nick and I didn't pay any attention. We used to spend evenings together playing board games, going for walks and watching movies. Now all the time he was busy, and he didn't have time for his own family. What can I say? I mean, he's not even with us anymore. He's alone, staring at the monitor. Do you think he communicates with her? Maria suggested. Probably, Emily nodded. He's either so happy for no reason, or he's just glowing. I asked him many times what he was up to, but my husband just guffawed at my inquiries. I understand that spying is not good, and I myself am opposed to such activities. Never followed your unfaithful father. But you didn't try to look into the monitor? Mother asked. Of course I did. But he reacted to my attempts with extreme dissatisfaction. I knew at once that he was hiding something. After all, we had never kept secrets from each other before. Of course, all this caused. I have many questions, and I suspected my husband of having a mistress. But I was still holding out hope. I wanted so badly to be wrong about this. But today you confirmed my worst fears. Emily loved Tony dearly. She understood that over the years of marriage, passions, emotions, and feelings had subsided. Her spouse might have lost their former colors. In addition, the whole story CKO riddled with nerves for both of them. But it seemed to her that after all they had been through, there was now something more between them, something far more significant. Emily thought that they had become really close souls, and there was complete trust and respect in their union. It turns out that I was deeply mistaken about us, and it all just seemed to me, Emily sadly remarked. Thoughts of her husband's possible betrayal tormented Emily, tormenting her soul and causing her unbearable pain. Mommy, you've been so sad lately, Nick, 10 years old, remarked one day. How old are you now? Emily thought then, looking at her son by his disheveled head and looking so much like his father. Will I have to raise you without a father? She thought, and her heart sank. Emily was silent for a while. She waited, hoping that everything would fall into place on its own. But her mother's visit and the truth revealed pushed her to decisive action. It is impossible to live like this anymore, she admitted. If I don't talk to Tony tonight, I'll go completely mad. Don't get too excited, Maria asked. It's easy to get emotional. Tony came home in the evening and, as usual, took his dinner plate and headed for his laptop. But Emily blocked his way. What is the matter? He was sincerely surprised. If you fell in love with another, not to be a coward. And tell me about it, looking straight into my eyes, said Emily. What other woman? What are you talking about? Tony became indignant. Don't worry, I won't throw any tantrums. And if you are afraid I won't let you see your son, I won't stop you from talking to Nick in vain. Just please confess that we are not humiliated by this vile affair on the side anymore. Emily's voice trembled. What the hell are you talking about? What connection? What on earth were you imagining? Tony threw up her hands. Don't be absurd. I already know everything, Emily said. Do you have another one? You're the only one I have, and there is no one else. And there can't be, her husband assured her. Then who the hell are you texting with from morning till night? Emily asked her husband, head on, feeling that she was on the verge of hysterics. And who did my mother see you with at the hotel at the time when you were supposed to be on a business trip? Who's the young blonde who's throwing her stuff around in our car? Or do you think I'm stupid enough to believe that stupid story about Razin's colleague? Tony sighed heavily and admitted it. Blonde. You see, she's not a mistress. She's my daughter. I should have told you a long time ago. Emily, staring at her husband, not understanding eyes. Your daughter? She asked again in shock. Yes. Her name is Lisa and she's 16, he said. Is this some kind of joke? Emily could not believe her ears. How did you suddenly have such an adult daughter? Remember when I told you that when I was a student, I was madly in love with a woman named Evelyn? She was my first true love. Yes, but your relationship was short-lived. She didn't seem to be single, Emily clarified. That's right, Tony nodded. I loved her very much, and I would have married Evelyn by all means. But alas, she was already married. A good wife. Emily remarked slyly. Please don't judge her. She'd hardly been married since she was 18. It was a marriage of convenience. The husband was more than 20 years older than my sweetheart. He was the man her father insisted on marrying, and she didn't dare contradict him. He had a construction business, which in the 90s was on the verge of collapse. Evelyn's family was on the brink of collapse. They could have lost everything. They had a profitable business, real estate, their livelihood. The partner promised to settle all problems in exchange for the young girl's favor. Evelyn loved her father very much and was grateful to the man who had saved the family from bankruptcy. "We'll get along with each other," she thought as she walked down the aisle with him, and then our fateful meeting took place. I understand that from the outside it looks ugly and dishonest, but that's how life works sometimes. We met each other, and at the same time we fell in love. And it didn't stop you that she was another man's wife. Emily was indignant. I mean, it's immoral. We were too young and reckless. Tony tried to justify his behavior. You have to understand that no one is immune to the feelings they have. How can you forbid yourself to love? The heart, as you know, can't help itself. A real passion erupted between us, unrestrained, frenzied. It pushed us into each other's arms with frantic force. It was as if we were obsessed and made love at every opportunity. I ask you to omit all these piquant details of your dates with gestures. Emily interrupted him. Our meetings took place in secret. Until one day, Evelyn broke up with me. Tony said quietly. It was very sudden and unexpected. There were no preconditions for breaking up. It seemed to me that she loved me as much as I loved her. I had hoped to the last minute that Evelyn would decide to leave me for her lawful spouse. But she suddenly disappeared. I couldn't understand what was going on. I was going crazy, looking for meetings with her, but she was avoiding me. I took the breakup very hard, and for a long time I couldn't forget about her. I had affairs, but none of my girlfriends compared to Evelyn. And 5 years later, I met you and my heart was filled with love again. This story of your tragic feelings I have already heard. There's no point in telling it to me again. But what has the daughter got to do with it? You never said Evelyn was pregnant. Don't you mean to say that she had a child by you? Emily was indignant. I didn't know anything about it myself, Tony assured his wife. In fact, I'd already forgotten all about Evelyn. But 6 months ago, I got a message on the social network from a 16-year-old girl named Lisa. She wrote me that she was my own daughter. I can't believe it, Emily admitted. How could you not know about her all these years? I was shocked by the news myself. I swear it, Tony exclaimed. I had no idea that my affair had had baby implications, said Tony. I'm not going to hide it. For a long time after I broke up with Evelyn, I took an interest in her life. Of course, I heard rumors that she had become a mother. But I could only rejoice in my ex-lover's marital happiness. I was sure that she had given birth to a baby girl by her legitimate husband. And I could not even suppose that the father of this little girl is none other than myself. I wonder what explains the long silence on Evelyn's part. Emily asked. It turns out that when she found out about her pregnancy, she was very scared of the prospect of not being able to live with me. I was still a student at the time. No apartment, no steady job. All unsettled and the wind in my pockets. I could do better than my own husband, a well-to-do, solid man who could give my child the best of everything. And then, after thinking carefully and weighing the pros and cons, Evelyn decided to hide the fact of my paternity from everyone. She gave birth to a daughter. Shortly after she gave birth, she moved to Chicago with her husband and child. I didn't know anything more about her from then on. And when I met you, I forgot all about her. You can only feel sorry for the husband who was fired. It's hard to envy him all those years raising someone else's child. So why has she decided to reveal the truth now? Emily asked. She would have kept her dirty secrets. She told her daughter the truth when she was 10 years old. Evelyn legally, the spouse had by then gone bankrupt and died after a long painful illness, replied Tony. And when Lisa grew up, she decided to look for her own father. That is me. In this age of social networking, it was not too difficult. That's when we started corresponding. But why didn't you tell me about it in the first place? It's not a joke. It's not some insignificant detail. It's your baby, Tony. Why did you keep it a secret for so long? Emily was furious. I just didn't know how you'd react to something like this. Disappointed by the news, Tony admitted, "You have to admit, it's not every day you find out that your husband has a grown-up daughter. To be honest, I was very afraid of your reaction. I cherish our family, and I'm afraid of losing you more than anything in the world." "What makes you think it's your daughter anyway?" Emily asked. "Could it be that you have been deliberately missold and deceived, and you believe the words of a stranger so easily? But why would she do this?" Tony was surprised. "What do you mean? Why?" "For profit, of course. You are the owner of a large company. You have business, wealth, status. There is something for the crooks to profit from. You're a piece of cake for them. Don't you have any doubts about the veracity of this heartwarming story? Worthy of a Brazilian novel. Why didn't you think about the fact that this girl might not be your own daughter?" "But an imposter and a con artist?" asked the spouse. "She is my daughter, I tell you for sure." "If you don't believe me, you can see for yourselves," said Tony. The man turned on his laptop and proudly showed Emily the page of Lisa in social networks. To her great regret, there was no doubt that this girl, Tony's daughter. Here, even without any DNA test, the kinship was obvious. The same cut of eyes, the same smile, the shape of ears, and even a birthmark on her cheek. The girl was in the same place as Tony. Lisa resembled her father, perhaps even more than their son Nick. "She looks just like me, don't you think? Only 1,000 times better. Look at the way she's grown. She's a beauty. She's got that exquisite figure. She's as graceful as a ballerina," Tony said. "Just look at that royal posture." Listening to her husband's compliments about the other beautiful woman was extremely unpleasant for Emily. Over the years of marriage, she managed to get used to the fact that her husband admires only one woman with his own wife. And now Emily felt a sting of jealousy. "I paid for Lisa's ticket to come to our city. Of course, I couldn't bring her to our house, so I rented a hotel room. That's probably where Maria saw us. I spent 2 unforgettable days with my daughter. We walked and talked a lot. After that, I put her on a plane and sent her back home to her mother." Emily hesitated for a moment, trying to digest everything she had heard. And finally, she asked a question that really disturbed her. "What now? What do you intend to do next with all this? Do you want to give this girl official recognition?" she asked. "Yes, I would like to give her my last name. Ideally, I would also like her to come and live with us," answered Tony. "What do you mean, move into our house?" Emily was surprised. "Yes, I suggested it. But she can't do that yet. She has to finish college first. And maybe after that my daughter will come here to study and work." Emily couldn't believe her ears. How could he suggest anything to anybody? Without even consulting me, she was outraged. The whole thing made her shiver. But Tony didn't seem to notice and continued as if nothing had happened. "I dream of taking Lisa into the affairs of my firm," my husband admitted. "I would like to tell her about all the intricacies of his business. Afterwards, I hope she'll take the reins. I think she has all the makings of a manager." "What do you mean, hand over the reins? What about Nick? He's your legitimate son, isn't he?" Emily reminded me. "Don't worry, I'm not going to disadvantage anyone." Tony hastened to reassure his wife. "All my children will be fully provided for. Nick won't need anything either. But you just told me that you were going to give the business to this girl. Is that fair?" Emily was indignant. "You see, I've given my son all my attention, love, care, and affection. I was there from the moment he was born. I was present at the birth, and I cut the cord with my own hands. Nick grew up before my eyes. And Lisa didn't get anything from me. I didn't see her take her first steps. I haven't heard her say her first words. I've missed so much, and I can't wait to make up for all the years I've been away. But it's not the least bit your fault," his wife reminded him. "It's all on her mother's conscience. You can't be blamed for that. But I want to. With all my heart, I want to surround Lisa with warmth and fatherly care and listen to it all." Emily had no desire to go any further. A wave of indignation was rising in the woman's town. Yes, he was just obsessed with this Lisa. Yes, he would rather have a mistress than this daughter. Suddenly, an eloquent thought pierced her. Ever since Tony confessed everything to Emily, married life left much to be desired. They began to quarrel frequently over trifles, for no apparent reason. And Emily understood that. The discord in their family happened thanks to Tony's newfound daughter, Emily. The most important thing is that Tony still loves you, her mother reassured her. Your family is still as strong as ever. You just need to be wise and take control of yourself. Since there is nothing you can do about it, you have to take it for granted. But I can't just accept the existence of a child out of wedlock. Emily's tears have been shed. This girl is stealing my husband and Nick's beloved father. Emily was hurt to tears. Her whole familiar world and way of life was crumbling. In addition, she felt jealous of Lisa. After all, she herself was left without a father at an early age, and did not know what a real father's love and care. While her daughter Tony is now bathed in her father's attention, Emily herself was well aware that this is silly, but nevertheless, she set out on the trail of competition for the attention of Tony. As a rule, a woman competes with her peers. After all, a rival is someone who opposes you and wants to win, to surpass you in something. Emily, on the other hand, saw a rival in a child. She herself was ashamed of the caustic feeling that arose toward the teenage girl. And in the war with Lisa, Tony was the main trophy. Does it make a tragedy out of what happened? Yes, it's all extremely unpleasant, but it's not all that bad. Just put up with it for your own well-being. Maria advised her daughter, "You're telling me. You were the woman who immediately divorced when she found out that her husband had taken a mistress." Emily became indignant. "Do you have some kind of double standard? Mom, you yourself did not tolerate the day, and I am taught to take it for granted. Don't compare. They are two completely different stories. Tony didn't cheat on you, unlike your father." Maria reminded her daughter, "Your husband had an affair before you met him, and he didn't know it himself. You can't blame him. After all, it's not his fault that that woman chose to hide everything. He's as much a victim of circumstances as you are. That doesn't make me feel any better. Our life won't be the same now. When you think that Lisa will be on the horizon, and her mother with her, it makes me sick." Emily shared her fears. "Do not worry before time. Get acquainted with this Lisa. Get to know her better. Maybe she really is a good girl, as Tony says about her. Look on the bright side. Our Nick will finally have the little sister he's been dreaming of." This frank conversation with her daughter will open up old wounds in Maria's soul. She remembered her ex-husband and how much she had loved him, how beautifully their family life had begun and how ridiculously it ended. For the first time in many years, the woman wondered if maybe she was to blame for their separation. It was not without reason that they say that both partners are to blame for the breakup. Perhaps she was spending too much time with Emily growing up, while her husband also needed her warmth of affection, her simple, human involvement. And what he lacked at home, he sought and picked up on the side. Maria sat down at her laptop, registered on a social networking site, and typed her ex-husband's name into the search engine. One of the first things that popped up was his profile. She had no trouble recognizing Michael. He hadn't changed much over the years. The trim figure and military bearing remained the same, except for a touch of gray in his hair. In fact, it even looked good on him. Michael had a lot of pictures on his page. In one picture, he was fishing. In the second one, he was resting on the beach. And in the third one, bravo, riding a horse. By all accounts, this man's life was bright and eventful. In a couple of pictures, a woman glimpsed. Maria immediately recognized the very nurse from Happiness, though she had visibly fulfilled and no longer resembled her nurse. Under each picture of her was a caption with her beloved wife. So, after all, this self-righteous upstart had succeeded in doing what she herself could not. The woman noted to herself, could it be that they were still together? Was he really happy with her? "Hello, Michael. How are you?" she wrote. She gave in to a fleeting sense of curiosity and pressed the key as soon as the message was sent. Maria immediately regretted her action as well. What the hell am I doing? She reproached herself. What for? Writing to someone who probably already forgot my name? The answer was not long in coming. 15 minutes later, she received a message from Michael. "I am very happy to hear from you. Although, I must admit, I was surprised. I've been trying to find you or Emily on the internet many times myself, but I figured you wouldn't want to talk to me. You must be offended with me. Well, there's a good reason for that. I am very sorry to you, Maria, and to my daughter too. But what can you do now? Everything has turned out the way it did. The clocks don't go back and nothing can be undone. So he who remembers the old things shall be forgotten. Tell me, how have you lived all these years? Married. How's Emily doing? The man was inundated with questions. There was a correspondence between the former spouses, from which Maria learned that Michael had married the same student and had 2 sons by her. After 3 days of online communication, the man suggested that Maria meet because the 2 of them, he said, had a lot to discuss common memories. Without thinking twice, the woman agreed to go to a restaurant with him. When she arrived, he was already waiting for her with a bottle of champagne and appetizers by candlelight. They were indulging in nostalgia. Do you remember when we went to the Black Sea on our honeymoon? Michael asked how we drank homemade wine on the beach, straight from the bottle, and snacked on apricots. And remember when we bathed naked on the wild beach in the moonlight? She echoed him too. They joked and laughed a lot. Michael was not stingy with generous compliments. He remarked how beautiful Maria looked. At their table, there was a romantic atmosphere, so it was easy to think it was a meeting of 2 lovers, but certainly not of former spouses. Maria awoke at dawn in her hotel room in Michael's strong arms. He was sleeping soundly with his cheek pressed against her. The events of last night's crazy night flashed through the woman's mind, and she felt hot just from the mere memory of kissing him in the cab. The embrace is hotel, and the frenzied desire to swamp both of them. The woman pinched herself to make sure it wasn't all a dream. I think I had too much champagne and I let my guard down, she thought, and felt like a young girl who had been seduced. She carefully climbed out from under Michael's strong arm and reached for the beautiful nightstand on which his cell phone lay. Maria had noticed yesterday how Michael had turned off the sound on it. Before he indulged in passion with her, the phone screen was lit up with 5 missed calls from a caller named Zach. I wonder what he said to her. It is unlikely that he is going on a date with me, thought the woman and grinned to herself. She turned on the front camera mode, smiled broadly, and took candid selfies next to sleeping naked and unsuspecting Michael. The woman then sent this intimate photo to his legal spouse, signing it with the words old sayings. He who laughs last laughs well. Maria had absolutely no intention of getting Michael back either, and she certainly had no intention of becoming her ex-husband's mistress. But she couldn't deny herself the pleasure of seizing the opportunity either. The temptation was too great. It was an elaborate revenge to punish Michael's self-righteous wife, and to knock her down, to show her that she was wrong after all. And the man who had once strayed into her clinging embrace persisted in judging life. Still, Maria dressed quietly, trying not to make any noise so as not to wake Michael. Throwing a parting glance at her ex-spouse, she sent him an airy kiss and left the hotel room. Maria knew it was their last meeting. When she returned home, the first thing she did was delete her social media account. Her ex-husband didn't have her phone number or address. Absolutely nothing. And even with all the desire, Michael would not be able to find her in a million-strong city. She was sure that, after all that had happened, he would want to do it. Meanwhile, her daughter Emily urged herself to keep her cool for the good of her family. And she more or less succeeded until, while she was cleaning up, she came across a cashier's check. It turned out that Tony was sending flowers to Chicago. The husband, however, did not deny anything. Yes, I sent my daughter a bouquet for her birthday, and I think it was the least I could do. I feel like swamping my little girl with all the gifts I should have given her. You know how much I longed for my little girl. Now I wish she was away from me. Not in front of me would I have spoiled her like a real princess. Emily was overwhelmed with blind jealousy. She could not stand it, and once again gave him a scandal. You spend all your free time writing to that girl, completely forgetting your own son and lawful spouse. She rebuked Tony. All I hear from you, Lisa, is this. I'm sick of your daughter. I am just sharing my thoughts and feelings with you. Her husband answered calmly. You were the one who reproached me for being secretive. Now that I am open and honest, do you not like what you hear? I do not understand you. You were not pleased with everything. I thought you were happy for me. What's there to be happy about? Be happy that our family's going to hell. It's like you're with her all the time now. They're with me, Nick," Emily said angrily. "Do you know how difficult it is for me psychologically? My head is going round and round in circles, a little more, and it feels like I'm going crazy. I'm still reeling from the last time I tried to get pregnant. And then there's this whole thing. I'm having a hard time accepting it all. And now more than ever, I need your support, your shoulder to lean on when you're not there. Sweetheart, I'm sorry. You're right. I do think about Lisa a lot, but I can't help it. It all happened so suddenly. It's so strange, so unexpected. I haven't quite gotten used to it myself yet. I'm experiencing a whole range of different feelings. All these years I've lived with the idea that I had one child, our Nick. And now I can't get used to having an adult daughter." Tony confessed, "I want to get to know her better. I think it would be a good idea to invite her to stay with us over the winter vacations. She should get used to us, get to know her brother, and get used to us. I think that's a wonderful idea. What do you think?" Emily almost choked with indignation. Her eyes blazed with rage. She had just spoken to her husband about herself, about her innermost feelings. And again, he reduced the whole conversation to Lisa. "Don't even dream that I would have your Lisa in my house. And as long as I am the mistress of this place, there is no other woman here categorically," said Emily, ready to attack her husband with fists. "Let me remind you, my dear, this house is as much yours as it is mine," my husband remarked. "You and I own the property equally, and I plan to divide mine among the children in the future. And since Lisa is as much my child as Nick is, I want to give her a share as well. It will be fair, and because you want it or not. But my daughter will have every right to live under this roof, like you and our son." Emily was literally shaking with anger. What a piece of news. "And already divided our property. Quickly sign whatever and whoever you want. Only I do not care about it. She'll never set foot here. You know me, I'll lay down flat. I won't let you climb on my doorstep." The angry woman said to her husband, "But you don't have to. We'll make do." Tony went on to shout, "In that case, I'll go to my daughter. For God's sake, go on your way. You don't have to come back, do you?" Emily threw Emily in the heat of the moment. The couple didn't speak for 3 days. On the 4th, Tony took the morning flight to Chicago. 2 days had passed, and still no sign of him. Emily complained to her mother. "He hasn't even called once. I don't know if he made it, where he is, what's wrong with him. So why wait by the sea? Why did you call your husband? It was Maria's idea. What about pride? I will not write to him first, as I consider myself the victim in this whole story," replied Emily. "Aren't you afraid that when you meet Evelyn, the old feelings of Tony will flare up with renewed vigor?" Mother suggested. "It's not for nothing they say that first love is never forgotten. You may lose your spouse because of your pride, my daughter. So let Emily sob. I don't understand why you're getting a divorce." "Well, you're already standing on the edge," my mother pointed out. "I don't know what to think anymore," Emily sighed. "Of course I don't want a divorce. I guess I'm guilty of this situation too. But I'm understandable. The news of a daughter born out of wedlock was like a snowball's throw from my head. Why is he so selfish? Why didn't he even think about how hard it might be for me to take it all? Why didn't he give me time to get used to the idea, to digest it and accept it? It seems to me that you are both selfish," the mother answered. "But you have to be wise if you want to save your marriage. You had to communicate with this Lisa yourself, to be cunning, to make friends with someone whom your husband admires so much, to show him that you are not his adversary, and at the same time to let this girl know that you are her father as one unit. Well, would Lisa stay with you for a while? Big deal. Then your husband would be with you. And now you sit and shit. Where is he? Will he come back to you or not? What am I to do now? Isn't there anything you can do?" Emily asked. "Now we have to wait and hope," Maria sighed. "Daughter, in order not to lead to a breakdown in the relationship, you need to take into account and agree with the person you love. And it must be done in respectful dialogue and acceptance of the feelings of the other. No ultimatums or conflicts will bring success. Only with reasonable compromises and mutual respect, you can achieve harmony in the soul of Emily a creaking cat, and she could not find a place and from the excitement. Her mother's words were keeping her awake. What if Tony really decided to leave her for his former lover? What if, meeting Evelyn again after all these years, Gauche's feelings flared up in his chest with renewed vigor? Lisa's mother may turn out to be much smarter than that, and she may have missed out on Emily. What if she is not shy and takes advantage of the situation? When there is a rift between the spouses, and to poach Tony, the woman fed herself for being so short-sighted and stupid as to allow her emotions to take over. For instead of becoming like-minded with her beloved spouse, she came into open conflict with him and ruined the relationship. I would accept his daughter and never reproach her for anything, just so Tony would come back to me. Emily decided. She talked herself into believing that there are no other people's children. True, in her opinion, it was about charitable actions, foundations, supporting orphanages, and so on. In these cases, all participation, outside help, carries no domestic burden, thus showing care and participation. The person is not faced with the problem of accepting someone else's child into their family. And in Lisa's case, it is somewhat different. Nevertheless, for the well-being of her marriage, Emily was willing to endure and bear all that she could. She was determined to make any sacrifice to keep Tony by her side. Her husband returned home 4 days later. By this point, Emily had finally realized that she couldn't imagine her life without him and was determined to do anything to regain his affection, trust, and love. She glowed beside Tony, trying her best to oblige him. She deliberately didn't ask about the trip, not to bring up uncomfortable topics. I waited patiently for my husband to start the conversation himself. Nick kept hanging around his father, urging him to play pirate. But he did not participate in his son's jamboree. He was gloomy and thoughtfully smoked one cigarette after another, and then opened a bottle of cognac. This was a bad sign, for Tony hardly ever drank alcohol. The last time he drank was when he buried his mother. And so Emily guessed at once that it was serious. There was something wrong with her husband. Could it be that he wanted to tell me about the breakup? She wondered. Sneaking a glance at her husband, bewildered for some reason, she could not remain in the dark. Emily decided to clarify the situation. What is the point of pulling the cat by the tail? It was better to dot all the I's and cross all the T's at once. Have you seen Evelyn? She asked her husband. I did, he answered. And that you want to leave me for her. There you go again. Please do not start that song over again. I am not now before your unfounded suspicions, answered the husband tips over a glass of cognac. I can see that something is bothering you. I'm your wife, at least for now, and I want to know what is going on. Tony looked up at his wife with eyes full of sadness and sorrow. Evelyn is dying quietly, he said. She only has a couple of months to live. It is for this reason that she insisted that Lisa find me. After she dies, there will be no one to take care of the girl. She will be an orphan. What do you mean, no one? What about you? The girl has her own father. Emily whispered, hugging her husband. And also a beautiful little brother. We will take care of her. You and I will take her to our place. There is plenty of room in the house. She'll live with us as part of the family. Are you serious? But you didn't want her. I was wrong to interrupt. Emily, her husband. I should have been reasonable, but I reconsidered my attitude to the situation. It wasn't the girl's fault it happened the way it did. She was probably the most unlucky girl in the whole story. The decision to accept Lisa into Emily's family was not easy. She knew she would have to face many difficulties. She had heard all kinds of stories and the unacceptable behavior of the stepdaughter, how they pushed the stepmother out of the house, set the spouses against each other, and tried to drag her father to his side. In addition, Emily feared that her daughter Tony, no matter how wonderful she was, would always remind her of the woman with whom her husband was once madly in love. A month and a half later, Evelyn was gone, and Tony traveled to Chicago to see her former lover off to her last journey and to pick up orphan Lisa. Emily, meanwhile, was preparing a room for a new family member. She picked out her own bedding, robe, slippers, and pajamas for Lisa. She ran around the store looking for a cozy plate, a mug, and an original boss. Called her husband several times to ask what kind of food Lisa liked, what kind of fruit she preferred. She wanted to be as prepared as possible for her arrival. The girl had to feel that her appearance is really welcome. Emily strove to surround the girl with care and to make her feel welcome, to show Tony, his daughter, that she was not their enemy, but their friend. Emily was nervous about meeting her husband's daughter for the first time, but when she saw her on her doorstep, all doubts were instantly gone. Beating, her heart squeezed with pain and tenderness. Skinny, crying. It was obvious that this girl was suffering greatly, experiencing her irretrievable loss. And Emily decided to do what she could to quench Lisa's sorrow. As much as she could. Of course, she reasoned that if there was a sincere desire to improve relations in their now extended family, if there was patience, a certain wisdom of women, then everything would work out for sure. It wasn't easy for her, but she understood that it was 1,000 times harder for Lisa to be surrounded by strangers. Emily took her time with her desire to get to know Tony's daughter. She was afraid of frightening Lisa and gradually and delicately took steps to bring her closer. And so began their new life, in which Lisa became the center of the family. That sunshine, in the warm rays of which all households wanted to warm themselves. Contrary to Emily's fears, the children became friends right away. There was no enmity between them. Lisa willingly played with her little brother, and Nick loved his older sister. "You were right, my dear. Lisa really is an unusual girl," admitted her husband, Emily. She did not expect herself to be attached to her husband's daughter. With all her soul, and the jealousy that Emily felt in the beginning soon dissipated. Thanks to Tony's good relationship, he couldn't believe that the whole uneasy situation was safely resolved. He was happy that his wife found the strength to accept Lisa, and also felt a sincere sympathy for her. And when Emily showed her husband the test with 2 stripes a year later, tears came to his eyes. "We're having a baby," Emily announced. "I'd already forgotten all about it. I can't believe it. It's like the proverb says, first you get a babysitter, and then you're just glad you're having a baby." Her son-in-law and daughter had tried in vain for so many years to conceive a child. They had given up hope, and then finally the miracle happened, and now Emily and Tony are the parents of 3 children, daughter Lisa and sons Nick and Rob. And for Emily, they are all relatives. And she knows that her daughter came into her life for a reason, so she had to have it for something.